Welcome to the XY Advisor podcast, where it's our goal to help you become the best financial advisor possible and drive the positive evolution of financial advice. Today we're interviewing Neil Macdonald, the CEO of the AMP Financial Planning Association. As I'm sure everyone is aware, with the stroke of a pen about a month ago, 1,000 AMP practices were almost halved in value, but overnight, which is crazy, right? Like this sort of cornerstone of the entire financial services industry has really done one of the biggest results from the Royal Commission, and it's affecting many advisors. So we sort of dive into how we got here, what's the results, what's going to happen now, what advisors are doing to sort of combat the changes, but also like on a higher level, what does that mean for the industry? Where are we heading to in the future? All those good kind of questions. So hopefully you enjoy. This episode is proudly sponsored by FE Analytics. Now, a number of XY advisors have already discovered this one-stop, easy-to-use tool that helps with investment research, analysis, portfolio construction, ongoing monitoring, and client reporting. Find out how FE Analytics can help you improve your business process, manage your existing client base, and win new business by contacting Bruce Jenner via bruce.jenner, Jenner, at financialexpress.net or visit financialexpress.net for more information. G'day, how's it going? What do you know? Strike a light, Clayton here from XY Advisor, and today we have a really cool conversation with Neil Macdonald from the AMP Financial Planning Association. G'day, Neil.
Hi, Clayton. How are you going?
Mate, good. Well, probably better than you, at least recently. So for anyone that doesn't know, and I couldn't imagine a single advisor in Australia not knowing this already, but there's been some movement at the station in regards to AMP planners and AMP in general with what they want to achieve as a business direction moving forward. And it seems to be, at least from where I'm sitting, that the thing that's getting pushed to the chopping block first is advisors. Now, as the head of the AMP Financial Planning Association, mate, you have been well and truly on the front lines of this, let's call it conversation, let's maybe call it a battle, depending on the language you want to use. But it's something that's affecting, well, the biggest licensee in Australia, and you're sort of front and center as a part of the, organizing what the response is from advisors. So, mate, tell us, where does this begin? Like, how do you even attempt to, respond to such a huge company like AMP?
Look, I guess to start with, up to now, we've always had discussions with them, negotiations with them, and so on. Those discussions and negotiations typically take 6 months to 18 months for something like as big as a bowler change. This time around, we basically got informed there's going to be some changes. Only half the board was told. It was under a non-disclosure agreement, so we couldn't actually even speak to the rest of the board. And then the announcement was made. So for the first time in probably 160 years, a change was made without any consultation or negotiation. And more importantly, without any notice being given to the advisors. So they couldn't actually decide whether they wanted to accept the changes or just be given them on without notice, basically. So it's quite shocking for everybody, whether they were planning to stay, whether you were planning to go, or whether you hadn't made your mind up. And even the firms who are staying now getting twitchy because effectively AMP says the contract's worthless and you can change it whenever you feel like it. So, yeah. So I guess in a practical sense, what does that mean for us? Well, we're paid by the members. We're a non-profit. We're a member-based association, and they asked us to help. In a practical sense, we coordinate the actions. So whatever happens will be, the planners actually taking the action, not us. But we've been looking at, the legal firms that might be able to help them. We've been going through a bit of a sort of a review of who's available. And we're pretty close to making some announcements about that. In fact, it might even be this week. So
right. Now, so I'm not fully familiar with the legalities, so maybe you can let me know if I'm right or if I'm wrong, but essentially AMP had a clause in their contract with all their planners, well, I should say with all of their practices, that said a change to the sale terms would be given 13 months notice before, or I guess everyone would have 13 months to make a decision on whether they wanted to stay or go for any future change. And that was always seen as somewhat of an insurance for the practice owners, so that, if anything like this turned up, they would always have ample warning to actually sort of stay or go or make a decision before being directly affected. But in this case, the consultants, I believe, came to AMP and they said, look, don't live up to that part of the contract, break that part of the contract. Now just tell everyone what the changes are, give them some really sort of strict terms, put them under an NDA, and then sort of just sit back and wait. Now, the advisors have responded to this and said, well, what about the 13-month clause? And at a really simple level, how can a company just break a contract like that? So I'm just super confused that how this could even happen, if I'm correct.
Look, I think there's probably two parts to it. There is a clause that says if there's a detrimental impact for the planners, they have to give 13 months notice. And that, changing the bowler from 4 times to 2.5 maximum and, 1.42 times glide path, we think is detrimental to the planners. AMP is arguing that clause doesn't apply, that it is actually about, there's an economics clause that they're saying that they can use, but to use the economics clause, 2 things. One, they've got to consult with us, and they haven't, obviously. And the second thing is we think the economics have been caused by them. So we don't think it's valid anyway.
Yeah.
And the third thing is it's never been tied to the market at all. I mean, as you know probably, that it's been, a cornerstone of their value proposition to attract planners in the first place, to fund them to grow their businesses and to give them certainty about their exit. So we think it's a bit like having a Macdonald's franchise. That burger shop costs a lot more than the local burger shop. So, we think it's been a closed ecosystem, that they've never changed the multiple, through a global financial crisis, through 2 world wars, to a stock market crash, but suddenly they have to change it now. So doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
And that's the basis, the action that our members will be taking.
So I guess from their point of view, they're saying, well, we actually do have a clause that we can lean on. Is that the centerpiece of their argument?
Yeah, but they can only lean on it if there's been an economic change, and secondly, if they've consulted.
Right.
And we don't think they can lean on it anyway because there's a detrimental change which we've got to give 13 months notice for.
Yeah, right. And so AMP have chosen to take this path, and obviously that's no secret. It's very much public knowledge. Obviously, I've never read a single one of these contracts because all advisors are under NDAs, and so I don't really know much about it other than what I've read in the, I think, trade media. One of them put out an article on what's being offered, but it does seem like that there is a large disadvantage to accepting the terms, and then an even larger disadvantage for not accepting the terms. And I'm just thinking, like, what else do you do? So the AMP FPA are putting forward a solution where it's a class action. So that's one strategy, and it is sort of full force, front on, bashing against the other, I guess you could say, much larger corporation. So fighting fire with fire. I have heard of other strategies. I believe someone was telling me about how because AMP Bank owned the loan and then AMP FP own the business, that there is a way to lose the loan by claiming some weird kind of bankruptcy, but you don't lose the asset. Again, I've never done it. I'm not really clear. Has that strategy been put forward to you at all, or does that ring a bell with anything that you've heard in the market?
It sounds a bit weird to me, that strategy, to be honest. The reality is AMP FB actually owns the register of clients. So our members have basically the right to look after the register, to grow the register and sell it back to AMP. The bank lends them the money, and the bank has always lent the money based on the BOLA value at the time. And so practice startup offers used to get 100% lent, and most firms get 80% lent, so the loan to valuation ratios. There is an indemnity from AMP Group to AMP Bank. So in the event there's a shortfall, the bank gets paid out by AMP. And so that may be where whoever was speaking to you was saying there's a get out clause. But the reality is, if you're a 30-odd-year-old advisor, you don't want to be insolvent and go into liquidation to get out of paying a debt that you thought was going to be paid anyway.
Yeah.
And so the challenge we've got is we've got different sorts of clients, if you like, our members. So the first group of members are those who put their notice in, last year sometime, gave 12 months notice, and suddenly has the BOLA terms changed midstream. And these are, one guy's 70-odd years old, there's a lot in their 60s, late 60s, they're planning to retire, and suddenly they've gone from a BOLA value of maybe $2 million to $800,000, or bigger numbers in some cases. The second group are people who are planning to stay, and the problem for them is they've been encouraged to borrow money. Like one guy borrowed $5 million as recently as July 2017. And suddenly his BOLA value and the lending, he's going to have to figure out how he gets, cash flow is the first thing. And then secondly, where's he going to be able to repay the loan from? And then the third group are those who, basically AMP's just tapped on the shoulder and said, we don't like you anymore, please leave. And again, there's probably about 150, 180 firms who were planning to be at AMP for some time, and suddenly, because of a change in strategy, they're being told they can leave. In some cases, the restraints are being eased, but in others, it's just a case of here's your 90 days notice. You've got a 3-year restraint from working in the industry, which is a pretty tough restraint. You can even be a cleaner and you're an XY advisor.
So would you say in your professional experience, because obviously, you've been in this industry for a while, would you say that this is a worst case scenario?
Look, I actually think it's unprecedented, and I think there have been better ways of dealing with it. I think in a practical sense, if they'd have said, the people have already put their notice in, we're going to pay them out because that's the honourable thing to do. If they'd have said to the guys that were staying, look, we want you to stay, we're going to actually refinance, organise that, give some certainty. And for the group they wanted to get rid of, if they'd basically said to most of them, look, we don't see you fitting in here, what we're going to do is remove the restraints and let you go work for somebody else. And, if you've got negative equity and you borrowed more than your value, we'll clear it. I think that would have been a sort of fairly, wouldn't be ideal, but it'd be a reasonable outcome.
Yeah.
And I think it would have meant that, the trust would have continued, because what they've done is actually impacted on trust on a company that's been there for 170 years.
Yeah. It's I mean, I a part of me looks at it. If I really strip all emotion out and I go, okay, this new team's been brought in to sort of rescue AMP, and they've brought in consultants just to figure out the best way for them to get out of the bind that they're in. And so I understand from like a ruthless point of view what they're trying to achieve, but I think they, sitting here, I just feel like their chances of succeeding are probably diminished because they've given a lot of people no way out. And if your back is up against a wall, I mean, you're forced into action. And I think what you just mentioned there, if they'd been more reasonable, then there's a good chance that with maybe a small amount of kickback, but because these are quite unattractive terms from my limited understanding of them, it's going to kick up a huge mess. And so what I'm guessing is that because of the lack of trust that advisors who would even be interested in staying, so across the board, so obviously there's advisors that they want to get rid of, but because of the way that these other advisors have been treated, even if you're not being kicked out, so to speak, you're probably thinking you're on very, very shaky ground. And then it kind of makes sense to partner with the other advisors that are in the bad position to ensure that, well, at least you're protected in a group kind of, if they all work together, then that's the best chance of fighting against it. Now, I've got no doubt that this is going to be a mammoth, legal case. I would say, because we know each other beyond this podcast, that at least AMP planners can, be thankful for someone with your experience is in this position that you are in. But this is going to take, I would imagine, years, right? Like, this isn't going to be a really quick legal case, is it?
No legal cases are quick. The good thing is we're down to 2 legal firms. We've spoken to, a number of litigation funders. They all think we've got a very good case, which is nice. It means that, the case will be fully funded. So planners won't have to put their hands in their pockets, which means that it's really about the time it takes rather than the cost it takes. I think the other thing is that individual planners may have cases they can take themselves as well, whether it's for, misleading and deceptive conduct, or whether it's unconscionable conduct. But as you've said, the best course of action we think for our members, and it's up to them to decide, is to go with first sort of group action. I think there is safety in numbers, and it's impacted everybody. I mean, whether you're staying or going, the fact that AMP's removed the 13 months notice is a big change. I mean, we've had Hillos and Charter guys coming to us and saying they're happy to fund the action because they know that if it gets changed for the FP guys, it's only a matter of time before it gets changed for Hillos.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How does what you're doing, I believe that the AIOFP are asking advisors to sort of dip into a fund to do something. Is that associated at all with what you guys are doing?
The AIOFP, through their separate organisation they've set up, is taking a constitutional challenge to remove grandfathered commissions and saying the government can't do that.
Right.
So they've been asking for people to chip in $300 and support their action.
Right.
And we're sort of broadly supportive of that because we don't think it's fair that people get sort of carpet pulled away from underneath them. From our perspective, though, we've basically said we think grandfathering should go, and what we've been asking for is a reasonable period of time. It's a bit like, we've basically said that there are a number of things that need to be addressed, such as, basically capital gains tax impacts, the insurability issue for some people that they can't move. Some of the products don't allow you to charge a fee, Centrelink issues. And subject to them being addressed, then a reasonable transition, we said, was probably 2 or 3 years. And so, because effectively, most planners are fairly resilient. If you say to them, you can't do this, and you give them a bit of time, they'll go back to the clients they need to go back to and change them to fees, right?
Yes. So I guess that the AIOFP is really just a general in nature grandfathering issue, whereas the AMP FPA, you guys are dealing specifically with AMP planners. That certainly makes sense. What kind of advisors are not getting involved? Like, why would you not get involved with this class action? Like, have you heard any argument in the market that says there's a reason why I'm not going to join the class action because of XYZ? Because I guess where I want to end up with is how do AMP advisors get involved in this? But before I ask you that question, it's like, why wouldn't they?
Look, there's basically two sorts of class actions. There's open class actions and closed ones. So depending on which way the lawyers go, if it's an open class action, you define what the class of people is, and everybody's invited. Well, everybody's involved unless they specifically opt out. For closed action, somebody may decide not to be involved because they want to stay AMP. Changes in contracts without notice are important, and so even the firms that are staying have said to us they're keen for us to push this. And obviously for firms who are going, the difference between 4 times and maybe 1.42 or 2.5 times is a significant amount of money. So, I think there will be some people who might opt out, but the vast majority, I think, will just opt in. We did a survey of our members. More than 90% respond, and more than 93% wanted to take legal action.
Yeah, wow.
So big numbers.
Well, that's really good. Like, what are the? Let's say I'm an AMP planner. Let's say I want to stay. What is there? Is there a reason why I couldn't stay with my licensee while at the same time I'm a part of a class action against them? Or is there a legal reason why I can't do that? Or is there a professional sort of courtesy why I wouldn't do that? Or is there could I get bullied out of the licensee if I'm seen to be supporting it? Like, what are the genuine risks of supporting being a part of a class action with an AMP planner that wants to stay in AMP?
As I said, if it's a open class action, they won't even know if you're involved or not because everybody would be involved automatically.
Right.
The second thing is the court actually stops somebody like an AMP forcing people out of actions because that would be unconscionable conduct.
Right.
So, there's a number of reasons why neither AMP nor the planner would be wanting to sort of, and I'm not a lawyer, but they wouldn't want to be seen to be opposing an action which was a fair action.
Okay, that's really good intel. So if it's an open, all planners will just become a part of it. What do they need to do if it ends up being a closed action?
or the legal firm would actually say this action is available, and would you be like to join?
Yeah, okay, so it's relatively simple then.
Yeah, it's basically normally an application form, and you fill it in and send it, and you're in.
Yeah, right.
As I said, if it's an open action, it might be, everybody who's an AMP financial planner at this stage is automatically included.
Awesome. And then let's fast forward a handful of years. Let's say that the AMP class action is successful. What is the result of that? Is the result simply that the new terms are not introduced, or is the result you get a monetary reimbursement with your losses? What's sort of the result of a class action?
So depending on the action that's taken, but let's say the first thing would be, if it's successful, that would find that AMP wasn't allowed to make the changes as they did, and therefore you're back to where it was before the changes occurred. So that then gives people another 13 months notice to work out what they're going to do. Yeah. Whatever changes occurred subsequent to that would be disallowed. And the third thing is that basically because the changes haven't occurred, you're now eligible for 4 times recurring revenue again. So there would be a damages claim for the amount of money that the difference between 4 times and 2.5 or 1.42, for the grandfathered commissions. So the way that would work normally, and I'm not a lawyer, is that they would calculate what the damage is, and then typically the court would order AMP to pay it normally to the lawyer's trust account, I think, and then it'd be dispersed.
That is really interesting. I've never actually gone through and learnt how a class action works, and that's some really good intel, man. Like, hopefully that there's AMP planners out there that are listening to this and sort of have a bit more of an idea, because that's all very much news to me. With AMP sort of coming out and saying, that the future of advice is technology, that really goes against, I guess, XY Advisors' view. We're extremely bullish on human advisors. We've got a platform, that we're launching. Hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, it's already out. But replicating sort of conversations that are going on currently, we're using it on Facebook. So we tend to think that with complexities of the individual, client position, that having a human help someone navigate those requires human interaction. And for AMP to sort of come out and say that the future is robo and tech, where do you think consumers sit with that in mind? So they're kind of looking at AMP as this old school company that got dragged through the Royal Commission, and they have had, an unfortunate time with their planners, which they're currently in court with. I mean, I feel like that decision is going to really backfire with a company that none of us want to see go under. Like, anyone in financial services would be kind of devastated to see such an old, established cornerstone of our whole industry go under. And I don't think anyone wants to see that. But it's kind of looking like there's writing on the wall a little bit, unfortunately, because I go, well, what stakeholder of the whole industry, whether it's planner or consumer, is now going to feel like they can connect with this company if their entire traditional business model has been replaced? And so does that kind of language get used when, the Financial Planning Association is dealing with the AMP itself. I mean, does that get communicated? Because I feel like there's something's missing somewhere. Like someone's missing the point if they think that technology is going to solve all the problems.
I've got a financial planner. I'm more than capable of figuring out my products, but the reason I use a financial planner is somebody independent giving me advice and my wife advice on what's actually happening. And secondly, it's to make it easy for me to take it. I remember years ago walking around for an application in my briefcase back in the day, and it took a year to fill it in. Now, with a financial advisor, it gets filled in pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And the third thing is, if something happens to me, they're around to sort out, the mess afterwards. From a practical perspective, what we think will occur is that technology will actually help the advisor doing the admin-y stuff, so that they can focus more on the face-to-face engagement with their client, the trade-off conversations that they occur. We've all hear the stories of, why have you got that? And, the husband and wife haven't ever talked about that. One of my advisors talked about the guy having a plane and, said, well, it costs you a lot of money to run the plane. And his wife says, yeah, I know. And they never actually talked about this, elephant in the room of this plane that the guy had. And when he had the conversation, they worked through it. And the client still got the plane, apparently, but it became a much better understanding of why it was there and what it cost and what the value added, Now, I can't see a computer being able to do that in a sensible way. But what a computer can do is compare products quickly, produce a statement of advice quickly. All of the lower value stuff can be automated so that you can actually have a deep conversation with the client.
Yeah.
And that's really, to me, what a financial planner does rather than a financial advisor.
Yeah, interesting. I've never really solved that question in my mind as to what is the difference between a planner and an advisor. But yeah, that sounds as good as any that I've heard.
Oh, thank you.
It's good to see financial products completely getting out of advice. Like you've got all the big end of town, and now it's even AMP who seem to be getting out of advice. I caught up with Centrepoint this morning with their team. They got because of the whole PIS issue a decade ago, and they sort of almost were the patient zero of going through your whole compliance, and they've come out really well prepared, at least from my point of view, to sort of start making calls and decisions and almost leading the industry moving forward. But there's with all this that's going on, and I really hope the whole reason XY exists is support advisors, right? And to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. And so we're all good and we're all okay and all positive about changes need to occur, but something you've mentioned is, giving it time and making it reasonable. And that is exactly our point of view. So from a personal point of view, I want all of these financial planners and looked after. And so, I really hope that, the advisors aren't the ones to lose out here. And I bloody will very much support the success and hopeful, good outcomes for planners if the class action does go exist. But at the same time, I'm sort of excited to see that through all this, maelstrom of bad stuff that's happening, that it's looking like we're pulling apart financial planning and product. And at a really high level, I think once we get through this, that advice is going to improve. What it means to be an advisor will have a much clearer idea, and I'm super excited, and I just want to see advisors not get screwed over in this transition. That's kind of my whole worldview at the moment.
One of the things that's important to get across, the planners that have been asked to leave are actually, in the vast majority of cases, good planners. They just don't fit in AMP's future business model. I mean, we've got, typically it seems to be somebody who's doing less than $500,000 of turnover. And, you can be a fairly good practice turning over 250, 300 grand with one support staff, looking after your clients. It may not be economic for AMP, but, it's still an economic business. And, we've seen that. We've had more than half a dozen licensees approach us and saying, look, if you've got planners who are looking for a home, give us a call, or get them to give them a call. And so these are good planners generally, but they'll be looking for new homes. And the clients love them, as you know. I mean, the research shows that if you've got a planner, you're better off and you feel comfortable and you trust them. We choose between people who've never had a planning experience and people who have.
Thanks so much for coming on and sharing with us today. I know you're probably one of the most busy people in the industry right now. So, really appreciate your insights. I'm sure a lot of advisors, both AMP and external, will find this really valuable information. Normally I say, how do people reach out to you? But I feel like you're probably swamped with communications as it is. So I'm sure the people that need to know will know the correct channels to catch you on. So, mate, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, look, and if anybody wants me, I'm pretty visible in LinkedIn and other things anyway. So more than happy to. I'm a great believer you have to put something back into the community as well as just take something out of it. So thanks for your time, Clayton. And
thank you, mate. Speak soon.